Good afternoon, everyone, and hope everyone enjoyed their lunch. And without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Will and Rob for a new equation for outcome-focused digital delivery, sponsored by PwC.
Afternoon, everyone. Hope you had a great lunch. Thanks for joining our session today. As introduced, we would like to share a perspective today on what we believe is a new equation for outcome-focused digital delivery. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge and pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the traditional owners of the land and waters that we work and live on today in Australia. Here in Canberra, we're on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Ngunnawal peoples, and I'd like to extend our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. As the intro, myself and Rob, we'd like to take a few minutes now to be able to set the scene for a panel discussion that we'll have a little bit later. We'd like to share with you a hypothesis and a perspective to that. We'll share with you an example, what we believe to be a great example of some of the outcomes that we can deliver, and the broader opportunity for public sector as a whole, and then some takeaways for your session before we'll hand over to Natalie and that panel. Firstly, our hypothesis that cloud provides opportunities for government to accelerate outcomes through digital products and data-enabled solutions with the latest innovative technology and while meeting the demands of cybersecurity requirements. I'm hoping there's nothing new here. I'm hoping this is pretty obvious. The excitement of the event that we have out today means that hopefully a lot of people here also agree that our hypothesis is a sound one. One of the key questions that we have is, well, how do we get there? In a recent PwC survey, almost 3/4 of business executives identified that they were working on a cloud strategy. Nearly 60% of executives identified cloud as a key strategic platform for growth and innovation, but over half of executives identified they have yet to see a substantial return on their investments. So what does that mean for us here today? We have a perspective that technology is the easy bit. The adoption of cloud really requires a holistic approach. It requires a number of things to come together to support the technology and the way in which that is adopted. We believe that there's 3 key ingredients to this. The first of which is to bring business, technology, and the user experience together in a highly collaborative conversation through inception through to operations. The second element of this is being really human-centered in the way that we think about requirements, the way we think about the value that we're driving, and the way we think about the outcome that we're looking to achieve. And the third of which is that we believe that value is best delivered in an agile way, but that has to be done in a highly rigorous, highly secure way, which requires extensive levels of engineering and automation. Hopefully, as we go through this presentation, you'll understand how we've taken those rules and applied that to a key outcome that we've delivered, and I'll hand over to Rob to take us through that.
Thanks, Will. I don't want to dwell too much on the 2016 census, but needless to say, there were very high demands and expectations placed on the 2021 Digital Census with respect to security, performance, and ease of use. And some of the stats and figures on the slide really demonstrate that the 2021 census met and exceeded those expectations in most cases. There's a few things we're really proud about here in working with AWS and the Australian Bureau of Statistics. I think the captured data of nearly 8 million records exceeded the ABS's expectation of the digital uptake of the form as opposed to the paper-based form. 100% uptime over 6 months demonstrated the resilience of the AWS solution in which we built this on. Really proud of the awards that were won to demonstrate the really high standards of accessibility and usability. There's another award not mentioned on the slide, which the ABS won along with the ASD, a collaboration award for working together in government, really highlighting that security collaboration for the digital census as well. And on the security aspect, which was dear to my heart as the cybersecurity lead from PwC's side, you can see the number of IPs blocked demonstrating some of the really strong preventative controls through the AWS solution. But also the fact that the digital census was certified and accredited at protected level. And I think it's one of, if not the leading example, of a protected level solution in public cloud, holding significant volume of really sensitive government data. And hopefully we see more of that to come now that we've had this really strong and successful precedent. So how did we get there? You've heard Gwil mention a holistic approach a few times. And what does that mean? It meant we had to bring together multidisciplinary teams from day one to achieve a successful outcome. So this naturally included cybersecurity and cloud and digital teams from the technology side of things, but also the business team, operations, legal, privacy experts, the senior executives, not to mention numerous AWS service teams, and at times the ACSC and ASD as well. And numerous times throughout the project, we came together. And to bring to life an example of that was as we got closer to census night, we ran a number of simulation exercises and rehearsals. And all of those parties I just mentioned were in the room at the same time to practice how we would work together if something was to go wrong in the event of an incident or a problem, so that we could develop a kind of muscle memory in the event of an issue, and we would know who was doing what and how. So that is really how we brought that holistic approach. DevSecOps is another term, a bit of a buzzword that gets thrown around a lot, but we did have to live it and breathe it on this project. The census had a really unique development life cycle. If you think about it, it had a really long tail of development and being designed and built and tested, and then a pretty short but intense operational period where the census was live for millions of Australians to use over a period of many weeks, but most Australians on that one night. And if you think about that challenge, that's where DevSecOps really helped, because the teams that were part of that long development cycle were there in the operational period to help with responding to issues and incidents and bug fixes, and were able to move rapidly and in an agile manner. And for something like a census, that's really important because you can't move that go live date. That census night is not changing, so we had to work really collaboratively in a DevSecOps manner. We've talked a lot about business-led outcomes. Needless to say, the underlying technology needed to be really strong. And a couple of key points I would point to was the number of AWS services that we used, including AWS Lambda. So we did adopt a serverless architecture for the census. The number of peak logins, a really staggering amount of activity in and around that peak night. I mentioned security, and on the previous slide you might have seen the DDoS kind of number. Distributed denial of service was certainly the number one risk and threat keeping me awake, and I'm sure many from the ABS side as well. But the census had this really unique challenge of a lot of legitimate traffic happening at a moment where you might also see a lot of illegitimate traffic in the form of a denial of service attack. So how you manage that really required us to bring together the smartest people from AWS in the room, along with the PwC team as well. Massive number of builds. Some people think the census fairly simple online form. There's a lot of complexity under the hood that required nearly 2,000 releases. And on the bottom point there, millions and millions of hardened cloud, which is our security compliance tool, continually monitoring for any issues or non-compliances, such as exposed S3 buckets across the 2.5 to 3 year journey of the census. So all up, again, what I hope the point this hammers home is that we were able to use a holistic approach to really exceed those expectations I mentioned earlier around security, performance, and usability. And one of the best measures of that in my mind is when I speak to people who use the census, when I ask them, hey, what did you think about census night? And the reaction I kind of get is almost downplayed a little. Oh yeah, it was okay. It was pretty easy. It took me about 7 or 8 minutes, which is exactly kind of the reaction you want. And it means it was very frictionless and it fitted in amongst our modern and digital busy lives. And to me, a great example of how we've strengthened trust between government and citizens in the use of digital technologies. I'll pass it back to you, Will.
Thank you, Rob. So as well as the delivery of digital products, something that I think you probably will have heard a lot about today is data. And the growth of data and the fact that it continues to be exponential. Through the lens of traditional IT, this would be creating everyone in this room major headache in terms of how to cope with that. From a cloud lens, there's an argument to say that the growth of data presents us a huge opportunity to be able to improve citizen outcomes and drive a more engaged digital experience. So in 2021, the Australian Data Strategy was published, and this actually calls out the fact that data can drive better insights, better decisions, better outcomes. It calls out the government's vision for unlocking the economic value of data, and it recognises data as an important national asset. So on one side, we have the growth of data. The second aspect is that year on year, new sources of data are becoming available to all of us, and all of these open up opportunities for us to improve engagement, the experience, the insight, and the outcomes. So given these two factors and the flexibility and scalability the cloud can provide, then the greater adoption of cloud services within the public sector feels as if it's utterly compelling, and something, therefore, that everyone here, I think, and everyone outside, hopefully also agrees with. One question perhaps around, well, how do we move forward and what considerations need to be made? Here on screen, you'll see a list the team pulled together of all the things that we had to consider in the successful delivery of the Digital Census. It's hard to read, I acknowledge that, maybe that's the point. And it's actually not exhaustive. A key takeaway from this also is that this reinforces the conversation we're having around the importance of a holistic approach, because all of these factors need to be considered. They need to be brought together with the technology in a highly sophisticated, highly orchestrated, and a highly rigorous way. The number of moving parts we had on the census was probably mind-boggling, as Rob said, not just on the technology, but the way in which the organizations all worked together as one team, the way in which we collaborated through all of these process areas, I think was a testament, therefore, to that holistic approach and the importance of doing that. And as we look forward, therefore, to Rob's point of the importance that technology can bring to building trust between citizens and government, our perspective is, therefore, that it's key that all of us in our digital deliveries take a really holistic approach to doing that delivery. On that, I'll just hand over to Rob.
So to sum up, I think you've probably tired of hearing us say the word holistic, but it works and it's proven. The census is one great example, and it set a great precedent in the public sector for digital services. The benefits are certainly compelling, and we see it as a way to really enable trust. The adoption of digital services is only going to increase and accelerate as we continue to live more and more of our lives online and in a digital world. And it's important that's all done in a way that is secure and gives us confidence, which is, again, a source of that trust. So with that said, I'm now going to hand over to Natalie, who's going to lead us through a panel discussion. Over to you, Natalie.
Thank you, Rob, and welcome everyone. It's absolutely wonderful to finally be face-to-face again for a summit. It gives me great pleasure to introduce three VIPs sitting alongside me today. To my far right is Craig Lindenmeyer, Director of Information Technology and Security at the AWS. Next to Craig, we have Kath Eastwood, who is a partner at PwC Australia. And last by no means least, Saket Narayan, who's the Head of Finance and Regulation at AWS. Thank you, panel, for joining me today. Craig, I'd like to start with you, if you don't mind. In line with the theme of this session being the new equation for outcome-focused digital delivery, the ABS made a relatively bold decision, particularly for government, and an unprecedented one for federal government back in 2018. And that being to embrace a cloud-native solution for the next census. Could you elaborate on the kind of the thought process behind that? What was the thinking, and how you came to that outcome?
Yep, certainly. So as Rob very briefly touched on, the previous census in 2016 was affected by a distributed denial of service attack, a DDoS attack, which took the form offline in the middle of census night for about 40 hours. Well, it took it offline on census night, and the resulting triage and incident response took 40 hours, which left the form offline. So following that, there was significant impact on the ABS's reputation, plus the government itself, an outcry in the public sphere. So, and there was also a subsequent review by the Special Advisor to the Prime Minister on cybersecurity, who made a number of technical recommendations around future conduct of the census, but a key recommendation from Alistair McGibbon was that we embrace the cloud for future census, as that would provide the required levels of availability, scalability, performance, and a contemporary user experience that we're looking for. And so looking forwards to the census in 2021, and we sort of, it was in 2018 when we engaged PwC and AWS to partner with us on the delivery of the census. We had started to have some skirmishes with the cloud. So in 2017, we had a small online form and a website to support the Australian Marriage Law Postal Survey. That was the same-sex marriage survey. And then in 2018, the ABS moved its primary website to AWS as well. So we'd had some skirmishes, we had some experience, but definitely for 2021, we had to step up to the big time there, and it was a big stretch for us.
Yeah, and presumably there were also a number of risks, right? Concerns, particularly security risks. What made you the most nervous? And I guess, how did you have the confidence in knowing that census night would roll out as it should be?
Yeah, that was, well, certainly from 2016, denial of service attacks were very front and centre of our mind. However, we did a lot of work in the lead into census night. We conducted a number of rounds of DDoS testing against the census and supporting systems, including conducting what we believe is the largest DDoS test ever conducted in Australia, and one of the largest seen by AWS as well. So it was quite a lot of money burned in that testing there, but it was all for a good effect. But then, taking on board the shared responsibility model that AWS outlines, really the security of the application rested with PwC and with AWS to do our security assurance pieces on top of that, so that we had confidence that the application provided the right levels of privacy and security that Australian citizens expected.
Sure, brilliant. Saket, I'd like to go to you now. Amazonians often refer to the voice of the customer, and it's wonderful that we have a mutual client of ours here today. I'd love to hear your views on the market and, share where you're seeing increased demand for cloud services in particular, and what's driving these requests.
Sure. Indeed, it's great to have the voice of the customer represented here on the panel today. So from a finance and regulation industry perspective, we see our customers really increasing cloud adoption from a number of different angles. So I'll touch on three today. Firstly, core modernization, digital transformation or digital uplift, call it whatever you will, but there's definitely an appetite to drive technology simplification or rationalization, reduction of technology debt, and as we talked about earlier, increase in cybersecurity posture along the lines of the ABS census story. So that's one. The second angle we are looking at as well is around the data-driven, intelligence-led objectives of a number of our customers, which often requires our customers to store large amounts of structured and unstructured information. And cloud is really well suited for storage, processing, and analytics of the data. And probably the last point I would touch on is the evolution of the digital finance system. And what I mean by that is a lot of activities and experimentation around the greening of the finance system, decentralized finance. We heard in the last week around tokenization in the crypto space. So we see our customers really pushing the boundaries around experimentation and innovation. And again, cloud computing really provides that scalability, that flexibility, and the speed to iterate on these propositions.
Yeah, thanks, Kat. And I think speed and iteration are key aspects of innovation. Kath, I'd love to go to you for your insights. You've been a public sector, trusted advisor for a number of years. How have you seen us as a firm adapt to those changes in markets, and what are you kind of seeing as those recurring themes?
I might talk about some of the things that we've been seeing with government over the last couple of years in terms of innovation and then how we sort of respond to those. It's certainly over the last couple of years, whether really by necessity, that we've really seen government really be driving new ways of delivering their core business. COVID, without doubt, one of the silver linings of COVID is really, the way it's supercharged innovation, I think, in the public sector. And there's a strong hope and belief both with our clients and the people that are working in the sector that this will, this drive for innovation will be one of the things we keep. And some of the things that we've been seeing that we find really innovative over the last couple of years is in the data space, for example, that cool GovTech use of data to drive real actionable insights. I'm from Melbourne, and I confess that I still miss those. There's a little bit of me that still misses those, daily charts about COVID, stats. We were kind of glued to the screen in Melbourne. If there's any Melbournians here, you'd understand what I'm talking about. There's that. There's really cool stuff that the states are doing around transport and customer patronage and congestion. And then the other thing that I'm really excited about from a innovation and a data perspective is the cross-government sharing that's been going on. I know there's still a lot of work to be done in this space, but I'm really like the energy and application we're seeing from the whole way from policy through to implementation to actually getting this working. The other two areas where we've seen lots of innovation is absolutely in speed, the speed to change and the speed to bring digital services online. Cloud has been absolutely at the forefront of driving that because it's that engine and the platform that allows us to do that, and it's also the engine and platform that allows us to do the cool data stuff. And then the last thing, and sorry to mention the holistic thing, but it's about getting that, getting digital out of the IT. We've been talking about this for years and years and years, but we're really seeing traction where the digital agenda is really being embedded into the whole of business, from, again, policy through cyber through into implementation, right? So those are the three sort of really innovative things we've started to see over the last few years. And as a firm, that's meant that we've needed to respond to those things. And there's a couple of things that we've been doing to respond to that. One is making sure that our people are digitally match fit. So that's making sure that they understand and are able to use the best in, analytics and AI and things like that. It's partnering with people and firms like AWS, making sure that we understand each other's business and how it can help our clients deliver value, and that we're certified in the products, and that we're delivering projects like ABS together. And then the last thing that we're trying to do as a firm to respond to these innovations is really take to market a joined up proposition that connects business and experience and technology so that we can really unlock that value of of bringing the potential of technology to life in our clients' bottom lines.
Yeah, thanks, Kath. Couldn't agree more. I think one of the natural byproducts as well, and we'll shift tack slightly, is obviously the well-documented skills shortage, particularly in our area. And Craig, I'd love to get your thoughts around how the ABS tackled this. Whether there were any benefits from partnering with certain organisations, as an example. But love to get your thoughts on how you're addressing this particular issue.
Yeah, certainly. Well, to start with the census as an example, we had a hard deadline to run the census with that census night on the 10th of August 2021. So there's no getting out of that, and we needed to be able to resource the project to deliver on time with no excuses. So partnering with PwC and AWS brought in immediate resources to that project, both in terms of the bringing bodies on the ground to help deliver, but also that skills capability injection that we needed to deliver the census. Alongside that as well, one of the really good things was PwC brought their code delivery pipeline, which had those DevSecOps tools built in to check the security of the code and the packages that were incorporated in the code as part of that delivery pipeline. So that was very helpful for accelerating the delivery of the census. But when you bring large organisations together, it is a case of herding cats. So both ABS, myself and my colleagues, PwC, AWS, and all of the other third-party providers who were in the mix for the delivery of census. Some days it was, I was tearing what's left of my hair out to get people, moving in the right direction. But it's one of those things where it's, you've got to work through those cultures and really it's about communicating and having the right governance mechanisms in place for the successful delivery of those projects. And probably just lastly around the resourcing side is around staffing. So throughout the whole engagement, we ensured that our own staff were given the foundational training to be able to understand what we were doing with AWS. And then we targeted certain groups of staff with that deeper dive technology so they're able to then, take that next step to be able to then, once we've got to the end of the census or throughout the engagement, they could provide that, in-depth support and, take the census to the next step for 2026. So, yeah.
Perfect. In sticking with the same theme around, partnering and what good looks like, so Kat, really keen to hear your views on that thread. You're a senior leader within the AWS leadership team. What does good look like from a partnering perspective?
That's a great question, Natalie. I'll probably again pick on three points here. Firstly, to begin with the end in mind. At Amazon, we call this the working backwards mechanism, and what it really means is to really spend time and dive deep on the end outcomes, on the business outcomes. And we really obsess over those outcomes and then kind of work backwards from them. And so the idea is to again, remain stubborn on that vision, the census night. There is no scope to change that. And so working backwards from that goal, but being flexible and adaptive on the details, because that really helps drive, in our perspective, in our view, high quality, high velocity decision making. So that's kind of one. The second point is really around communication. The role of communication, clear expectations and accountability management, the importance of that just cannot be overstated. So I really encourage our customers and partners to, again, to your point earlier, Craig, spend time and dive deep on things like the shared responsibility model and security, architecture, design, it could be governance or operational resilience, and just really making that a priority. And my last point would be around what we like to refer to as the minimizing the regrets, and what this is really about is to leverage insights and experience from our customer base, our global customer base, and our partners' customer base. And really the idea is don't try and reinvent for common problems. In fact, leverage the insights to catalyze your business innovations.
Yeah. Brilliant. Kath, I'd love to get your views similarly from your perspective on what partners like AWS bring to firms like ours.
I think for me, I'm going to quote a statistic that Gwil actually showed up on his slide, right? Cloud-driven transformation has been on our clients' agendas for well over 10 years now, right? But the statistic that Gwil showed on the slide that said a bit over 50% of our clients are saying that they're not getting the value from that investment is, to me, terrible, right? There's so much value that we're leaving on the table, and that's when partnerships like AWS and PwC coming together to help close that value realisation gap, I think is absolutely key. We come together, the power of us coming together enables us to better connect and help our clients connect technology with their business ambition, to understand and leverage the potential of the tech, the art of the possible, and doing that in the most, reliable, high availability, secure, quick way possible, so that value is not left on the table for our clients. That's what I think is the power of this partnership.
Yeah, brilliant. Couldn't agree more. We'll shift topics slightly. ESG is becoming a hot topic of discussion, certainly in the conversations that we're having with our clients and internally. And it's really spanning public sector as well as private sector. In your regulative role especially, Saket, really keen to understand how you're seeing this manifest itself across the AWS customer base, and what the future holds from your view.
Great question, Natalie. My first reaction to environmental, social, and governance, ESG, is that it's a really broad topic. So I'm going to try and touch on, again, 3 themes in the interest of time. Firstly, we are seeing an increasing focus in terms of our customers really trying to make sustainability a priority in their business transformation goals. Our executive customers often ask us on data points in terms of sustainability benefits, particularly around carbon emission reduction as part of the new policy proposal or business case to drive that cloud adoption. So again, our customers from a carbon footprint reduction perspective can lower the carbon footprint by 88% today by just migrating the workloads onto AWS. That number goes down to 96% once AWS is powered by 100% renewable energy sources. And by the way, we are on track to achieve that milestone by 2025. Our customers also get access to a complementary tool, which is the carbon footprint estimation utility, which provides you with really granular visibility in terms of carbon, again, reduction, projections, and things like that. So that's kind of my first point. Secondly, to your point around ESG, we see our customers, particularly in the financial services, leveraging our artificial intelligence and machine learning services to come up with climate risk models. And the second use case, which is also very related, is again leveraging AI and ML services to build ESG profiles and ESG scores to drive investment allocation decisions. And my last point around regulation, we're very much aware that regulators around the world raise the risk around greenwashing in the ESG space, so overstating the sustainability-related efforts from firms. Our customers also tell us around the world that getting access to ESG data, cleansing the data sets, and also the lack of a global language or a framework. Yeah, so we welcome the recent International Accountability Standards Body, ISB's, consultation on climate-related disclosures. I'll probably mention one last service from AWS, Amazon's Sustainability Data Initiative. And so ASDI is really geared to help innovators, scientists, and researchers to really catalyze the sustainability-related research initiatives. And it helps them with access to ESG-related, freely available data sets.
Wonderful. Look forward to having many more conversations on this topic.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Kath, I'd like to close out with you. The be wonderful to get a high-level view of what you're seeing as the key drivers for transformation, given the many different aspects that you would be touching within PwC as a firm.
Okay, I think this is an easy question, and the three things that I see driving transformation are, first off, community expectations. Fairly or unfairly, our public sector organisations are being judged against services delivered by companies that have been born in the cloud and are not impeded by legacy footprint. So our communities are expecting governments to get services online quickly and make it easy and personalised and secure. So that is absolutely one of the things that is driving transformation. The second one is the cybersecurity threat. It's out there, we all know it, we're all dealing with it, it's absolutely real. I'm seeing a lot of my customers use that as the burning platform to drive change in their organisation, and in particular get off the old kit and onto the new, more secure, more available, more reliable cloud-enabled solutions. And then the third thing, of course, is cost. It's always been, budget pressures has always been intense for government organisations and public sector organisations. The pressure has just ratcheted up an nth degree now with budget repair and the inflationary pressures that are going on at the moment. It is absolutely driving opportunity for us as practitioners of technology and digital and cloud to be able to go in and help address these issues.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you for your insights. That brings us nicely to the end of our panel. Craig, Kath, Saket, thank you so much. Super grateful for the insights that you've shared and taking time out of your busy days. Please join me in thanking the panel today.